Just what in the heck is going on at PlayStation? It is, do you know, there is only one word to describe what is going on at PlayStation Studios at the moment. It is absolutely shambolic. Let this sink in for a moment. PlayStation has more cancelled games than they've announced or released on the PS5. That is ridiculously shambolic. 8 cancellations, 8 plus cancellations in 3 years. Where are all the big story-driven first-party games PlayStation is known for? And outside of that, what is Sony actually good at? Sony's pivot into live service games has been nothing short of disastrous. I mean, you get a Helldivers 2, but outside of that, they are face-planting harder than the PSVR 2 sales. I mean, it is just a joke, and people will talk about record PlayStation revenue, but ignore their completely razor-thin profit margins, and the massive losses they've suffered, and the money that they will have to write off. Concord, 400 million. I mean, it's just shambolic, it's diabolical at this point. And you have to ask yourself, why has Sony pivoted to games as a service? Well, the reason being is they cannot afford to continue making these big, hyper-realistic, story-driven first-party games that they're known for. These games that have bigger budgets than some of the biggest Hollywood blockbusters, and then go on to sell a couple million copies. PlayStation games are not buying these games. Spider-Man 2, fantastic game on PS5. Last we heard, back in May 2024, it had sold 11 million and had just about broken even on a ridiculous budget that was over $300 million. Ratchet & Clank, last we heard, it sold 3.9 million copies. Astrobot, sold 1.5 million copies. And PS5 consoles sold, last we heard, November 2024 financials, 65.5 million units sold. PlayStation gamers are not buying Sony's first-party games. 11 million people bought Spider-Man 2 on an install base of over 60 million. What are we doing here? Sony's not making their money back, which is why they've pivoted to this absolute trash live service nonsense. They cannot afford to continue making these big hyper-realistic games. The money's just not there, they're not making them. Astrobot, fantastic game by all accounts. 1.5 million units sold. That's not going to put a dent in the production budget of any of these games. Ratchet & Clank, 3.9 million. It's not going to put a dent in the budget. Spider-Man 2, barely broken even. Those are the top selling first party games from PlayStation. They can repackage Last of Us as many times as they like. They are not selling. The top games on PlayStation platform are games like Fortnite and Call of Duty. Those aren't owned by Sony. Yeah, they'll make a lot of revenue from some of those games. For every Helldivers, you have got a litany of cancelled games. The majority of them are live service. I mean, if we just go through this list, it is absolutely nonsensical. So apparently Sony was working on an MMO based on the Horizon franchise. Cancelled. Deviation Games. There were another one working on a live service project. And then the studio was shut in 2024. Waste of time and money. Twisted Metal was apparently being developed by UK studio Firesprite as a live service game. Cancelled as far as we know. London Studios. Shut down. They were apparently working on a live service game as well. Studio gone. Time, money wasted. Naughty Dog, The Last of Us Online. Cancelled. Naughty Dog has 2 games in development. One we saw a trailer of, Intergalactic The Heretic Prophet, and The Last of Us Part 3, obviously. But those games aren't coming out anytime soon. And the time and money that they've spent on The Last of Us Online, someone's got to pay for that. Sony's got to find a way to pay for that. But you'll never get that time back. Naughty Dog could have spent that time that they spent working on The Last of Us Online, working on Intergalactic The Heretic Prophet. And that game may have come out in 2025 or sooner. Maybe even come out last year, who knows? You will never get that time back again. And then last week we got news that PlayStation had cancelled 2 upcoming live service projects from the Days Gone developer Bend Studio and the Demon's Souls remake developer Bluepoint Games. Bend Studios had apparently been working on a third-person, open-world military shooter. I mean,
groundbreaking.
You know, shocker, we haven't got loads of those out on the market as it is. Whereas Bluepoint Games was working on and make it make sense, a God of War live service game.
Oh, that is it!
How do you live service God of War? The Sense, baby, make it. The Sense. What are we doing here? What is Sony doing here? That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And Bluepoint, you had them working on a God of War live service game for 2+ years when they could have been, in fact, we don't even know how long they were working on it, several years, when they could have been working on something else. This goes back to what I said earlier. It's not even just about the money, which is disgusting as it is, the waste of money in these games. It's the waste of time. Money can come and go, but time is the one thing you can never ever get back. And they are wasting it. They are wasting time at PlayStation Studios, pivoting to this live service BS, chasing this golden unicorn of live service BS. And on top of that, Ben Studios and Bluepoint Games have been told that Sony will work with them to determine their next steps and minimize job losses. That's nothing to celebrate about at all. And then we have Concord, Sony's biggest live service failure, Sony's biggest failure game-wise ever.
So Concord is Sony's biggest released game by budget to date, and it is the biggest loss that they've ever had as a company on a project before.
Reportedly 400 plus million sunk into this absolute sinking ship. This steaming pile of turd. Years sunk into that. A studio shut down as a result of how bad this game was and sold a measly 25,000 copies and was yeeted off the shop shelves after only 2 weeks on the market. Absolutely embarrassing for Sony. 400 million. Think of what 400 million could have done investment wise into games. Maybe smaller games like the Astrobots. Smaller budget, critically well received. May not have sold as much, but at least the budget is probably made up from the sales. Bungie. Sony sunk several billion into purchasing Bungie. And what have they got from it? Yeah, they're continuing work for Destiny 2. And apparently they're working on a new game called Marathon, which is an extraction shooter.
Groundbreaking.
I mean, God, any more shooter it's like originality's gone out of the world. It's just shooters. Ben Studios, again, cancelled. I mean, I haven't done anything since 2019's Days Gone. Let that sink in for a minute. All we know is that Sony had them working on some crusty live service game, which then gets cancelled. That's 5+ years. They could have done anything in that time. But no, Sony had them working on live service to then cancel it. Absolutely shambolic. Insomniac. Arguably the Sony studio that has been carrying the PlayStation 5 in this generation, whether it be re-releasing Spider-Man Remastered, Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2, Ratchet & Clank. They have been carrying the PlayStation when it comes to first-party releases. And yet, Sony had their best studio, arguably their best studio, working on some live service Spider-Man game. Now, you could argue that live service Spider-Man game may have been good. But again, why not get them focus fully on Wolverine and maybe give that live service game to another team? Why have you taken your best players off the field to go and do some stupidness? It's crazy. It's shambles. Sony PlayStation is in a shambles. You can talk about revenue, talk about PSN numbers, but at the end of the day, the profits matter, the time matters, the games matter. And I can guarantee that you are going to see in a very near future that as a result of all these cancellations, as a result of this pivot to live service, you are going to see PlayStation 5 first party games release day and date on PC and PS5 because they need to do something to recoup this huge amount of money that they have wasted and they have lost. And the only way they can do that is by releasing these day and date on PC. It's guaranteed to happen in the future. The live service is not working for them. That golden unicorn is not being found. Sony's 2024 for first party was dry as. We had Helldivers 2 and Astrobot. There were probably more Xbox games on PlayStation last year than there were first party games from Sony PlayStation Studios. Let that sink in. That's crazy. All the time people have been saying, oh, Xbox hasn't got any games, Xbox hasn't got any games. There's more Xbox games on PlayStation than there are PlayStation games on PlayStation. This generation for the PlayStation 5 is absolutely cooked. We are in the second half of the PlayStation 5's life cycle. Sony said that themselves. How are the next 3 to 4 years going to look? There's talk of the PlayStation 6 releasing in 2027. That's 2 years from now. What are the next couple of years going to look like for PlayStation 5? I mean, at this point, PlayStation fans have only got Xbox games to look forward to come to their system. The system that apparently has no games, Xbox, has more games apparently coming to the PlayStation 5 than Sony has released on the PlayStation 5 or will release. I mean, if Sony carries on at this rate, you're not going to get any new first-party games until the PlayStation 6 comes out. I mean, let that sink in. Let that sink in. Where has all the talent gone? Where's the direction gone? Where are the hits after hits after hits that came during the PS4 era? And then if you want to rub salt into the wounds, former PlayStation boss, former president of Sony Interactive Entertainment, Shuhei Yoshida, said he resisted the live service push, and that's one of the reasons why he was retired in air quotes. He also said that if PlayStation fans want more first-party games, they need to buy and support remasters. The single-player games PlayStation is known for now cost so much and take so long to make that Sony needs additional income sources to support them, such as remasters and PC ports. What did I say earlier? This push for hyper-realistic graphics that barely look any different from the PS4 generation. You can slap ray tracing onto a box and a game, whatever. It doesn't change the fact that most of these PlayStation 5 games don't look drastically different from their PS4 counterparts, or the PS4 in general. Yeah, there might be some nice visual effects, but outside of that, Sony themselves say that 50% of people are still playing on PlayStation 4. Most of those people are playing Fortnite on a PS4. They have no reason to upgrade to a PS5. What does the future of PlayStation look like? All I can say is that this legacy, the legacy of the PS5, is going to go out with a whimper rather than a bang. It is shambolic. I don't know what is going on at Sony. What has the PlayStation... What are they doing? I don't understand what they're doing. It is shocking to see how shambolic PlayStation Studios is in at the moment. The state it is in at the moment. And I'm no Sony fanboy at all. I have a PlayStation, but I literally bought PlayStation just to buy Spider-Man 2. That was the only incentive to buy Spider-Man. But outside of that use case, I could have waited. The game's coming to PC next year. I could have waited. In hindsight, I should have waited till it came out on PC. I don't know what you guys think, but let me know what you think in the comment section below. I personally think PlayStation Studios is in a shambles at the moment. PlayStation in general is in a shambles at the moment. There is no direction. There's this live service, this pivot to live service, games as a service is hurting the PlayStation. It is hurting the brand. It is hurting the perception from consumers. And it's not benefiting anybody. Employees are facing job losses. Budgets unsustainable. And you're just going to get high prices as Sony tries to find various other revenue sources to prop up these ridiculously massive budgets. It's unsustainable. Anyway, that's my rant over because I'm sick and tired of hearing about this madness. How are you cancelling? How do you have more cancelled games than you have games released? That is crazy to me. Can you imagine if Xbox or Nintendo had 2 first-party releases in a year and several cancelled games in a year? Can you imagine the headlines? Can you imagine the industry response to that? I don't know why people are not screaming from the rooftops. This current iteration of Sony is cooked if they continue at this rate. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below, because at the moment, PlayStation Studios is in a shambolic mess. Smash that like button, subscribe if you're somebody new, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.